And if Chris came home late and he got up early, with clients, he comes out in his underwear. I'm just like, oh, this is not going well. Maybe if you worn a robe, could have been better. But it began this conflict of, is the loft a home or is the loft a business? And for me, it was both. This short story is about how to live in a 7,000 square foot loft and make it work until it doesn't work. It starts with, after art school, I got a loft in uptown Chicago. And it was actually the old ballroom of a 1922 hotel. It was called the Lorelei. It was across from the Aragon, which still is a very well-known music venue. Now, people say, how did you score a ballroom? Man, it took some effort. I was looking 2 years before I graduated for lofts because I thought this was the artist's dream. There was a series of serendipities that occurred. We had access to this loft, and it was in a SRO, single room occupancy of Section 8 living. It's all code word for people who were okay to clean and shower themselves, but maybe not mentally stable to look after themselves. The hotel was converted to that single room occupancy. And myself and two friends, we were all very close friends. And it started out great. I was into the molds. Christian was a carpenter. My other guy was a house painter, but we were all had this plan. And so we rented this studio. I think we got it for maybe $1,400 or $1,500 a month, heated, which was a big deal. Heating 7,000 square feet. Ken was our landlord. Now, he was a guy that had some shady past too. I mean, I saw him escorted out of the building in handcuffs one time. But this loft living, as an artist, it's a great dream. But what happens in a loft is that you can be in this big space and it's almost a little lonely. Even to a party, we didn't know enough people to make that loft look full. But the first thing we did was we renovated it, and we had no money. So I remember going to nearby construction sites and pulling lumber out of the dumpsters. It wasn't all as poor as that sounds, but that's the dramatic part of it being fun. We were just desperate for material anywhere. I remember taking the marble stall dividers out of the bathrooms. Remember, it was a ballroom. They had big bathrooms. And we turned those marble stall dividers into our dining room table, and we had toilet paper dispenser for napkins. Some people were grossed out by that, but we cleaned the tables, for God's sake, so it's not like it was a legacy issue. At a certain point, this loft became pretty terrific. We got our shop, and each one of us had our workspace. We all had entrepreneurial thoughts. Christian got a job at the Field Museum building sets and exhibitions, and so he became kind of 8 to 4 guy. And then, why can't I remember my other friend's name? Darn it, we were so close too. He was a house painter, and so he would leave the loft and he'd go paint. I was a guy developing a business out of the loft, so I was trying to bring clients to the loft. And what would happen is it was Chris. They were both Christian and Chris. And if Chris came home late and he got up early, with clients, he comes out in his underwear. I'm just like, oh, this is not going well. Maybe if you worn a robe, could have been better. But it began this conflict of, is the loft a home or is the loft a business? And for me, it was both, but I was very clear that the business had clients, not just my own activities. And so Christian, I didn't really like his artwork. I mean, bless his heart, we were good friends, but his artwork was terrible. And he would go for work and I would take all his artwork down because I didn't want the clients to think that was my representation of art fabrication. So that was awkward. And the other thing is privacy. We were 3 guys, we were all single, we all had girlfriends at one time or another, and basically our rooms were all connected in this one long school bus. There was basically a wall separating, and we thought if you put enough sound insulation in between, that would be great, but we had drop ceilings. Whatever, we just gave each other space, and I think I was the unluckiest of them all, so I was the least embarrassed. But so loft living is basically about loss of privacy. I remember one evening, I'd just gotten the Apple computers, like when they just started coming out, and I'm clacketing, typing, and this, and I bought a fax machine. I thought this was a miracle. I can send a picture to someone else. I'm like, how fantastic is this? Anyways, I'm typing and I'm doing my evening work, and Chris comes out. He's like, can you type not so loud? And he's like 60 feet away from me in his bedroom. If you could hear me typing, you could have heard me other things in the room. So it became tense. Those guys left for work and came back home. I was at work, at home, and then eventually got to the point where it's like, this is not working out. I stayed the course. I felt like, guys, we knew this was going to be a business here. All of our ideas were that this was going to be business. So eventually they moved out, and I partitioned half of the loft because I thought, what am I going to do with this much square footage? I'm just one guy. I got 3 bedrooms, a kitchen, a big bathroom, this, that, and the other. I met these, I don't remember how I met them, but it was this young guy, kind of a fancy, sporty looking little guy. And it turns out he was a male stripper. Why that's funny is not because I cared what he did for a living, but he was into performance art. And that big wall that I built dividing the 2 halves of the loft, and I built that wall by myself. Man, I remember heaving that. It was a hard wall to build. I was proud of that wall. Well, that nice big wall became the back of their stage. So on the other side, I had these guys dancing, and his brother was a performing artist guy. And I would be like, you guys, I got to work in the morning. Now it was completely reversed. It was their playtime, and nighttime was I got to sleep because I got clients coming tomorrow. It was awkward. The other thing is on their side of the partition, there was a big bathroom. It was a ladies' bathroom, and we turned it into a dark room for Christian for his photography. That room was, the stalls were taken out and it was painted black, and it had one window to the outside, but it was this really neat black room. And the little boy stripper, tiny guy, there's another stripper, Silky Jumbo, he was bigger. So anyways, he made the dark room into his bedroom because he didn't have to build any walls. You see, all the other guys, I partitioned it, but now I'm like, oh, you got to put in a bathtub if you want a bathtub. I'm not installing a bathtub. This was raw urban loft living. He painted his room by splattering paint. It was, kind of Jackson Pollock-y. And I went in there and I was like, oh, you painted, it looks pretty good. And then I'm like, you didn't close the window when you painted. My car was parked right below the open window. What are the chances? What are the chances? So now I'm like, I got a stripper paint job on my car. I'm like, you son of a gun. This is just, he's like, oh my God, Mike, I'll wash it off. I'll wash it off. It didn't wash off, I had to think about him every time I entered or got out of that car. I'm like, come on. This was not worth the $800 a month they were giving me, which by the way was like pulling teeth, cash from a bunch of kids. It was terrible. The other thing is they invited their friends over, fair enough, but their friends were stupid and they would go wandering through the building, and this was an SRO. And at night we had Tyrone. Tyrone was a security guard. Tyrone would fold you and put you in an envelope. He was a big guy, and he had a gun apparently. I didn't know that, but the kids found out, and they would all go walking around the building and they'd scare the shit out of these old people just by this young person. They're expecting old people in the building, and we never went upstairs. We'd come in the lobby. I remember coming in the lobby, the couches were embedded. It would be the same people. It was like a painting. The same people would be in the lobby, and there was this big projection TV. Any time of the day, I would come in, Wheel of Fortune, and there'd be all this applause, but everybody would be sitting in the couches. The first 2 months in the loft, we were on the meal plan. They had a cafeteria, and the cafeteria was let me tell you, it was strange, but on one day a week, they had a banjo player come in. We're sitting at the table, there's a checkered tablecloth, and we didn't know it was assigned seating, but if you're on the meal plan, that's how they knew who was there and if you had special dietary. So we're in there. Everybody else is like 100 years old. We're in our 20s. A lot of people wanted to talk to us. And then the first day of live music, old Susanna, won't you flip? If I had had a cell phone then, seriously, I would have had a whole movie by now. It was full of humor and full of tragedy. The fire department was at that building every day. Not because of fire, but somebody needed something. And we were not wise enough to understand this. This was before I split the loft in half. We had our first party, and we were so excited to show all the painted this, and we removed the drop ceiling and big arched windows. We had a barbecue grill out on the fire escape, and someone's out doing the barbecue and just started, and sure as shit, the fire department shows up. We're like, oh no. We smoked out the building, some sort of alarm system's go off. Just as the fire department is putting their hook on their ladder to pull down the fire escape, my buddy's bringing the grill in. It was like, yeah. And the fire department just comes pouring in through our loft. And I was like, oh my God, we did not think this through. We did not get ready for that. But loft living was not normal. We used to ride our bicycle. Because there were music events all the time, there would be stagnant traffic in front. And there were people walking along the sidewalk. And I remember walking along the sidewalk. I was walking inside the loft, and along the sidewalk, someone else was, and then walking. The building was a block long, so we'd have this mutual experience, except I'm inside, they're outside, or I'm riding a bike, or they're whatnot. It was very peculiar. We were like on a spaceship. It was only the second floor, so we could sit out on the windows and look down into all the cars where they were traffic jammed for the Aragon. But we felt like millionaires. It was so exciting. And I have to say that the business takeaway from this is that I think I was 23 or 24 when I had that loft. And when I had clients come over to the loft, they too came through the Wheel of Fortune. But, Jerry at the front desk, she'd be like, oh yeah, Mike's upstairs. And they quickly kind of found their way to us. But the moment that a client came into the space, I had instant credibility, because they would see a very young face, but I could tell right away that they were And one of them told me this, so I'm kind of carrying their projection forward. They're like, oh, I thought you were young for the job, but I saw your ambition in the space that you have and what you're taking on and what you've done and what you're doing. And so that's when I realized that space matters, and it can matter for credibility. Environment matters. There's times when it doesn't. You find that old craftsman in the basement, and it's like, I don't care what you drive or what you're wearing, I just need your skills. But building a business, you see, that was an old guy who had a history and word of mouth and clients and all this other momentum moving forward. I needed everything on my side to say that, yes, I can do this, because I hadn't done it before. And that's when I realized this matters. Don't come out in your underwear. Loft living, it was fantastic until it wasn't.